In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we are recording live. Not really, but hi, Taylor. How are you? I'm just trying to test out radio voices.
I'm good. How are you?
These radio voices working for you or anybody
No,
out there?
I like it.
All right.
I like
Well,
it. You're in radio.
yeah. Yeah, we're like Howard Stern in the early days. But yeah, let's go on and dive in. I assume you had a exciting weekend.
Holy crap. Yeah, we had Friday. I live next to Joshua Tree and there was a big fire and it was scary. Like I couldn't smell anything, but there was smoke. And then they were like saying that we might have to leave, just like a bunch of rumors. So we definitely packed our bags and got ready to go just in case it was scary.
Yeah, I do
But
remember
we were
living.
okay.
Yeah, I remember the LA wildfires were always an issue when I
hmm
was there, and it sounds like they're an issue out in your area.
Yeah, I heard that climate change is getting worse than ever we expected.
I've
So it's great.
heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. It's super cool. No, and yeah, I was thinking like, especially because we talked about Chernobyl last week, like the times that I've had to leave my house because I thought that because of an emergency, like on September 11th, and then like in COVID, I left my apartment in LA and I never went back to it.
I
I'm very
remember that. Yeah.
fortunate that I had somewhere to go and all these things, but still, it's like, what do you take? We kind of like, we have like a go bag that has our passports and our social security cards. Obviously, everybody has that. And then I had, just kind of packed some dresses that I really like and some teddy bears. I don't know, just kind of like just in case.
I do not have a go bag, unfortunately, but it sounds
You
like I
have
should
to
have
do that.
one. All right.
You have to. Yeah, just have your passport, like your social security card, your um what else do I have in there? Just like
Chargers,
yeah,
computers.
chargers, exactly. Chargers, computers, like if you wear glasses, have a second set of glasses. Like just medicine, keep in there just so you can just like leave really fast because you want to leave immediately. You don't want to dawdle. Remember like in like LA in January there were like videos of people like in their kitchen with like flames out the
It
window,
was nuts. It
It's
was
like, dude, you have to
nuts.
leave like way before it gets to that point if you can. Like, especially when
Yeah.
you're gonna be ready. So anyway, get a go bag just so the stuff that like, your house documents and things like that.
Welcome to our show, which is a doomsday prep show now, partially.
Everyone is doomed.
Which
Um,
actually, Taylor, is good timing because we thought we were in the middle of a tornado like 4 days ago.
I know that was like the day you got like crazy hail and then everything California's on fire again. Canada's on fire very badly.
It was insane, the hail was. So we were in Rachel's car and it has a glass
hmm
roof.
Oh God, scary.
And yeah, I took the dog canopy. The dog has like a canopy in the back seat that kind of like it's like a hammock for him to sit in. And I took that out of the bed because the dogs weren't with us. And so I took that
hmm
out and just put it over our heads. I was like, this thing is coming down on our heads in shards any second now. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Little taco stand next to the house blew over completely. It looked like an apocalypse had happened. It was
No,
really
totally.
terrifying.
I saw, yeah, you sent me all those videos of like the sonic ice hail everywhere.
Which technically Daniel Shepard, thank you again. He's the one who sent me that. So shout out to Cred. But anyways, so I think I'm gonna go first today. Is that right?
Yes, and I haven't even introduced us.
Oh yeah, please.
Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We bring you history's most notorious disasters and greatest failures, history and today, because things are falling apart beneath our fingers. Welcome. I'm Taylor, joined by Forrest
Yes, I'm here. I'm gonna
joined by
kick us
Miles
off
too. And my baby.
and Mouse.
And my kids are just like sitting here. I have this like 3 foot square space where I'm like, this is the space where my chair is. Don't hang out in here. And then they're
What's
like
going on here?
they like wrap themselves underneath like under in like the spindles of my chair, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my
of
God.
course, of course. It's the things that you don't want them to be doing that they tend to do. But yeah, so I'm gonna kick us off today, and I'm actually gonna kind of touch on a bit of what you discussed Chernobyl wise in
Ooh.
my story, and I'm actually gonna do a little ending dessert, which is like a mini story at the very end because we touched on a topic in your topic on Chernobyl that is going to be kind of relevant here. So
Cool.
I think I want this episode to be titled Lucky Dragon number 5.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
Thank you. And that is the English translation for oh jeez. Daigu Fukuryu Maru. Oh God.
Wow,
I'm
that
sorry.
was excellent.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If anybody speaks Japanese natively, please. You know what? Don't tell me how bad I did.
Nah.
I already know.
Yeah.
So that is the name of a very unlucky Japanese fishing vessel that was working 80 miles southeast of Bikini Atoll on March 1st, 1954,
Ooh.
which was when the United States conducted its first ever dry fuel thermonuclear bomb detonation, which I don't know what it means, but it was a really big boom.
I feel like I've seen the videos.
Yes, there's a ton of terrifying videos of this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to dive into what led up to that day, what happened the day of, and what the after effects were. So, as with anything, we're going to go a little bit into world history here. So let's talk about world history at this time. So from 1947 until 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved, the U.S. and the Soviets were engaged in the Cold War. American nuclear weapons experts concluded that the Soviets were so far behind them because the U.S. had already deployed Fat Man and Little Boy in 1945 against Japan. They basically assumed that the Soviets, it would take them until the mid 50s to be able to even like build any sort of nuclear capabilities whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
To
For like
obtain
power or for weapons? Or both?
weapons.
Weapons. Okay.
Yeah. Nobody cared about power.
Right.
It's Cold War.
Just clarifying.
Yes. Those experts were wrong. Go ahead.
No.
Oh,
Go.
those experts were wrong. The USSR detonated their first nuke in 1949, and by 1953, they had a version that could be delivered by plane, the same way the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were. And this kicked off the nuclear arms race between the two countries and their allies, which for the US cultivated in the Castle Bravo tests, which we all know gave birth to Godzilla, sort of.
Right.
Yes. So to yeah.
Have you ever seen those like pictures of like, because Godzilla always looks like he's like walking on the water, like he must be wearing stilts. It's just
It is
funny.
ridiculous. Every time I
Because
see
you're
that,
like the way that monster is on the water doesn't make any sense.
yeah, he would have to be like 5 billion feet tall to stand in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
So to start on Castle Bravo, let's start with the location that was selected, Bikini Atoll. So we're gonna look at a brief history of the area, like super, super brief. So between 1885 and 1914, the Marshall Islands, which Bikini Atoll is part of, was a German protectorate that was mostly used for procuring coconuts. For some reason, I can't totally figure out why Germany was super into coconuts. They decided to do this.
My ties. I don't know. You know what's so gross? A coconut. Like you're just like eating
You are
it.
so wrong. It is
No, it's
amazing.
gross. It like tastes like nothing and awful at the same time.
I'm gonna disagree with Taylor on this. Write to us and tell us who you agree with, like me or Taylor. Are coconuts delicious or bad?
Mm.
So from 1914 to 1944, Japan seized this protectorate from Germany. In early 1944, the U.S. captured the Marshall Islands during its war against Japan. In 1946, the UN created a thing I've never heard of called the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, and that trust was placed under the control of the U.S. We'll kind of pause on the history there because that's the only relevant part of this ownership that I really wanted to figure out because I was like, why did they pick this area and why did they do it here? It never made sense to me because when you look at pictures, it's like, it's gorgeous. You should build a resort here, not like drop bombs on it. But that was my take.
I agree.
So,
Hot take.
Yeah, exactly.
More hotels, less bombs.
Yeah, more resorts, more lazy pools, less bombs.
I love a lazy river.
Everybody loves lazy river.
Continue.
So later on, the U.S. would not super relevant to this story, but later on, just so everybody's aware, like the U.S. would dissolve the trusteeship and grant freedom to the three nations that are currently there: the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Palau, and the creation of a new U.S. Commonwealth known as North Mariana Island. So that's the history of this area.
Is it near the Mariana Trench?
Yes. Cool. It's named after that. Well, no, actually, the trench is named after the Mariana Islands.
I feel like you discover an island before you discovered a trench.
You would be correct in making that assumption. The U.S. in the late 1940s through the late 1950s decided that they wanted to run nuclear weapons testing at Bikini Atoll, with the Operation Crossroads testing that started out, it ended up with like two bombs, but that's irrelevant to our story. They followed that up immediately with the Castle Bravo testing, which is what is the biggest version of the bomb testing exercises here. The reason they wanted to do it here was A, they controlled it. So they didn't need permission really from anyone. The indigenous population was like super, super small. And weirdly, like they seemed like they were pretty flexible to like leaving the area. Although like it wasn't really, it was said that it was done because the US like made a plea to like the chieftains there that it was for the greater good that they leave and it would end all wars. And they kind
Like
of like
leave
did it.
for forever though?
Well, here's we're gonna get into that
Okay.
because nobody actually knew what the outcome of this testing would be.
I feel like they just made them leave. I think that's a
It
lie.
was definitely more of a directive than like a recommendation.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It was very remote and was very far off from shipping lanes, which would limit any fallout that could occur.
Hmm.
And since there was nothing there except this like unbelievably beautiful tropical oasis, if the explosion blew it straight to hell, nobody would miss it. That was the theory,
Right.
except the people that
Called it
lived
home.
there. Yes,
And the animals and the ocean.
there was no animals after this.
No, I know, but there were before we're there.
Before this, yes. So the site was selected. Next, planning for the testing, the U.S. knew that they were going to be blowing up some very, very high yield bombs. But like we kind of saw this in the movie Oppenheimer, where like knowing how big a bomb is can often be a matter of conjecture. Like you don't actually know how big the blast is. Like remember in Oppenheimer where they were like, it might ignite the atmosphere and kill everybody. Like you, no, nobody really knows these things with any degree of
I
complete
actually didn't see it.
certainty.
Didn't see it. I didn't see it.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
If you've heard.
Yeah, I feel like most people did. I will probably eventually someday see it.
So there was again like there was little certainty. There was mostly like wide range guesses of how big this bomb would be. Castle Bravo would later be determined to be the biggest bomb the U.S. has ever deployed, even up to today.
Wow.
Yeah, it ended up being about 700 times larger in yield and destructive power than Fat Man dropped over Hiroshima. Fun fact: the Soviets did create and detonate a much, much larger bomb. Bravo ended up being a 15 megaton bomb. The Soviet bomb, Tsar Bomba was its name, was
Mm-hmm.
50 megatons by comparison. Huge.
Jeez, did they do it?
Yeah,
Wait,
they fired they did it.
God, that's awful.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, anyways, at this point, before they detonate this thing, nobody really knows how big this bomb is going to be, the Bravo one.
Right.
I read a lot about how the design of the Bravo was different from Fat Man, and I even asked ChatGPT to kind of explain it to me, which it sort of did, and probably also added me to a list. I still don't actually understand it. I think the gist of it that I ascertained is that Fat Man was a fission only bomb, whereas Bravo
Hmm.
was a fission and fusion bomb. And when the two come together, it creates a thermonuclear reaction.
Whoa. Yeah.
So in this case, the U.S. didn't expect a yield of anything larger than six megatons. Still big, but not insanely big.
Right.
So they put together a fallout map showing zero contamination within a controlled zone. And it was basically like all this modeling around where fallout would happen. And it was all based on a 6 megaton bomb. So they were like, just stay outside of this zone within this period of time, and
Hmm.
everything's going to be fine. And the weather's going to flow this way, and it's going to be great.
Hmm.
By the time Castle Bravo was scheduled, there was no inhabitants on Bikini, but the other atolls had not been evacuated. And those folks weren't even told that they were at risk because they assumed it was going to be a smaller bomb, essentially.
What's an atoll? Is that like a type of
I think,
island?
isn't it like the tip of like a volcano that's sticking out of the water that
Oh,
becomes an
maybe.
island? So when the bomb went off and its full yield was realized, occupants on Rangalap Island had skin burns, hair loss, and vomiting within hours of the explosion. Inhabitants of this other island, whose name I won't try and pronounce, they would later develop thyroid problems and thyroid cancer. Prior to the explosion, the U.S. made 50 nautical miles out from the center of the blast site, the safe zone. In reality, the safe zone should have been over 300 miles from the blast site, given how big the yield was. So that brings us to the main characters of our story, the crew of the fishing vessel Lucky Dragon number 5, which I'm going to refer to instead of the name I said earlier.
That makes
So
sense.
This vessel was equipped to fish for various kinds of tuna. After World War II, the Japanese economy was obviously decimated, and tuna became a primary export as the people there kind of tried to get back on their feet. The
Hmm.
Marshall Islands were particularly popular with Japanese fishermen because it had a high concentration of tuna. It also wasn't overfished as parts of the ocean that are closer to Japan are.
Hmm.
The Marshall Islands are about 2,500 miles from Japan, so it's not easy getting there and it's not easy to get back. But the closer fishing areas were fished out. Like they'd be, you wouldn't get a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Their fishing strategy was to use what's called long line fishing, which basically means dropping a line that can be up to 60 miles long into the water
Whoa.
with bait and hooks at certain intervals. There can be as many as 3,000 hooks on this thing, and you use it for deeper sea dwelling fish, essentially.
Wow.
The other reason Japanese fishing vessels like to fish here was because of internet. It was in international waters, so the fact that their lines were constantly catching sharks and sea turtles was like irrelevant, didn't really matter because nobody was there from a legal perspective to call them out on it, essentially.
Right.
So exact details aren't known for, but most people kind of settled on the ship being around 80 miles from the blast radius from Castle Bravo, so well outside, well beyond the safe zone. So 50 miles of the safe zone, they were 80 miles out.
Okay. But they
Uh,
didn't know this was going to happen.
they did.
They did know.
They didn't know it was going to happen. Yeah.
Okay.
The crew witnessed the blast and thought nothing of it because again, they knew this was going to happen, and also the shockwaves in the ocean didn't impact their ship at all. So like whatever, who gives a like they told us 50 miles is fine, we're 80 miles out, we're totally fine. Hours later, this fine ash made of sand and vaporized coral, chock full of nuclear fallout, started raining down on them. At this point,
Yes.
the fishermen knew something was wrong and realized they had to get out of the area, but their lines were still down. So like, we got to collect our haul. And if you ever seen the most dangerous job, what is it called? Rough sea, whatever. It's you got to make all your money in one sitting. You got to make
Yeah.
a year's worth of money. So if you don't do it, then you're screwed. They finished what they were doing and started heading into shore, but given their distance from Japan, it was going to take them a while, and the symptoms of radiation sickness kind of hit within the hour.
Well, also, like, aren't the fish radioactive now?
Yes,
Okay.
which I'll get to.
Okay. I'm like, I don't think you should take things home with you from that excursion.
But they don't know any of it. Like radio, like the effects of radiation. We didn't. U.S. didn't even know what radiation poisoning was when they dropped the bombs on.
No, I know.
So like nobody knows for sure what's going on here. It would take them nearly 2 weeks to get home, all while their ship was just caked in this radioactive dust. They're breathing in the fine particles. At one point, some of the men were like tasting it to figure out what it was, like putting some of it in their mouth, which is like not what you should do at all.
No, whenever I see that in a movie, when they're like, "Oh, what is this powder?" and like they touch it or whatever, what's this thing? And they touch it and they taste it. I'm like, "Don't do that.
Yeah,
That's not
usually
smart."
not a good sign.
Okay.
So they would suffer from headaches, generalized pain, burns to their skin, nausea, their hair fell out. They would arrive super late on March 14th, so roughly like 13 days, 14 days after the explosion. Um, but it was so late that they couldn't offload the fish, which was great because by the next morning, when everybody went back, they went back with somebody because they went to the hospital immediately. And then like you were suffering from radiation poisoning, so we can't take the fish off this boat. So the fish were just dumped in the ocean. During this testing, it was found that the men's bone marrow contained less than half of that of a healthy person.
Right. That's what we talked about last time too. It like affects her bone marrow really quickly.
Yep, yep. And yeah, it was very obvious to everyone that I wrote that a biophysicist has concluded this, but at this point they're with doctors, so they could have told them anyways that this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
radioactive fallout. So just for anybody that's counting, that is the third time the U.S. nuclear weapon program has directly impacted Japan, and
Uh,
only Japan. Like it is nuts. On September 23rd, the first crew member would die after getting meningitis, falling into a coma, getting pneumonia, and then just expiring.
yeah.
The rest of the crew, with 22 men that were remaining, they were released about 14 months after this, after they were admitted to the hospital. I couldn't find out what happened to all of them, but a lot of the ones I could find died pretty young. There was a lot of liver, stomach, and colon cancer, stomach ulcers, a lot of people dying of like these illnesses in their 40s, 50s, some in their 60s. One of them became relatively famous as a nuclear disarmament activist, and he had a
Sounds.
stillborn child as
Mm.
well. Um, and there was one guy I found who ended up quitting fishing and starting a tofu shop, and he lived to be like 97. So like, go that route if you're trying to live for a very long time.
Like that
Um,
makes sense.
but all that to further illustrate why Japan's history with nuclear technology is like so disastrous, I'm going to cap this off with another brief side story on radiation poisoning, the worst radiation poisoning that has ever been observed in human history, which is
Ooh, yeah.
also a Japanese man.
Yep.
I don't know, like, I mean, now it makes sense why Godzilla like
Yeah.
came from Japan.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk really quickly. So I'm cap that story off. Do you have any questions relates to that whole universe?
Well, I know that doesn't SpongeBob SquarePants live there?
I don't know. I never watched that.
He lives in Bikini Bottom, and I think that's like supposed
You're
to be like
right.
the
You're
reason that they're
right.
all like that is because the of the bomb. Also,
Yes.
an wait, I actually do have two questions. An atoll is a ring shaped island.
Yes.
Like the volcano comes up and then the things around it. And then what was the point of it? The test? Just to see how big it was?
So no, the point, sort of that, but really the bigger thing was a dick swinging competition between the U.S. and the Soviets because
Yeah.
it was a constant mutual assured destruction, which was like show them you can do it too, so that nobody decides to do it. So
Yeah.
that's why they were doing. That's why the U.S. was doing Castle Bravo. That's
Hmm.
why the Soviets dropped Tsar Bomba. It was just to let everybody know that we can do this without actually killing anyone.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Cool.
So, but to be fair, like the U.S. has built a ton more, way more capable nuclear weapons, but the capabilities to assess yield are dramatically better than they were in the 1950s, obviously. And
So
so
you don't actually have to do
you don't
it
have to
to
do
like,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
you know it's going to have the impact.
Yeah.
So let's get to this poor guy named Hisashi Ouchi. Remember this name?
I do. We talked about it a little bit last time.
Yep. Um, it was covered in the last podcast episode, worst ways to die, and they cover like a dozen of the worst ways to die that are on record on human history, so it's worth a listen for sure. But we're gonna go into a brief description of what happened here, which is again also in Japan, at the first nuclear power plant that was ever built there. Um, it was called Tokai Nuclear Plant, about 30 miles, 30 to 50 miles, I can't remember which, outside of Tokyo. So in that area. On the premises of this plant, there was the facility to convert uranium hexafluoride to enriched uranium to be used in nuclear reactors because you have to enrich the uranium and all that stuff. There's a whole process here. I watch a lot of videos on what this means. I don't get chemistry or
No, it's hard. I don't get
science.
chemistry either, so I think that that's fair.
I'll explain it as simply as my little brain can.
Thank
To
you.
enrich uranium, you're supposed to mix the not enriched uranium with nitric acid, but you're supposed to use automatic pumps to precisely measure how much of each substance is being mixed. Wait, keep mixing, doing it that way. Okay.
Hmm.
Safety precautions at this facility were super lax, and the demand on production was super high. And so instead of mixing it gradually and in small batches, they were manually doing this by hand in large quantities to speed things up.
Hmm.
They had accidentally caused nuclear fission to occur, which is a chain reaction of splitting of atoms by doing it with this like haphazard process. There were three workers, including Hisashi, doing this at the time. Hisashi was right next to the tank. He was the one feeding it full of the stuff that he was supposed to not be doing manually.
Oh God.
He had a colleague next to him who was a bit further out, kind of helping him out. And there was another one in a nearby room, about a couple meters over the other side. All three reported seeing bright blue and white flashing lights and immediately realized, oh no, something bad just happened, and they evacuated the area.
Hmm.
Later on, it was determined that Hisashi was hit with 17 sieverts of radiation. Eight is a fatal dose. Like if you get eight, then like you're basically a dead man walking.
Right.
So this is the highest amount of radiation ever recorded in human history of a single human receiving.
Wow.
The guy in the other room stayed in the hospital for several months before being discharged. Like he was mostly fine. The guy next to Sachi died after 210 days. Hisashi died after 83, but not before basically being used as a lab rat by doctors and scientists to observe what the human body can tolerate.
Ugh, what a fucking, what, 83 days or whatever.
He was basically forced to stay alive those 83 days. If you look up pictures of him, he looks like basically a skeleton with melted flesh dripping from his bones. Like, I was trying to understand like what this like it precludes your body's ability to live from happening, which like requires you to have cells split and create new cells that refresh old cells as old cells die. Like all that goes away. Like you can't do it anymore. He should have immediately died because all of his organs were damaged and he had no immune system left. Like he was just his body just ceased to function.
Mm-hmm.
He was conscious during his multiple blood transfusions, through his skin grafts, through bone marrow transplants, which are crazy painful,
Oh my God.
while simultaneously begging doctors to let him die.
Yeah.
Even after suffering a heart attack, and in one case having 3 heart attacks in a single hour, he was revived.
Oh my God, poor guy.
And then it was on the 83rd day that his heart gave out in such a way that they could not revive him, and he finally was able to pass.
Oh my God, I did just turn off the safe search and see the picture. And is that it? Is that
Yeah.
really true? Oh my God, it's awful.
Yeah, the one with his leg up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's like you're melted. You're a melted person. Like there's nothing there. You're you're
Hmm.
you're just dying. Every cell that you have is the only cell you're ever gonna have again. And
Right.
that's
So
gonna
you're
die
not,
fast.
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So
Yikes.
very, very gnarly, very gross. Feel really badly for this guy.
Me too.
But yeah, can't shout out the last podcast guys enough. Go listen to them. Worst ways to die.
That sounds fun. That must
Yeah.
be really old. How old is that one?
That had to be one of the like pre 200s
Yeah.
episodes. They're like in the thousands, I think, at this point.
Yeah. That's
So
fun.
but yeah, that's my story. Lucky Dragon number 5.
Cool. That's crazy. I didn't know that they were there.
Yeah.
That is
Well,
a bad, bad luck.
it was really bad luck because it was 2,500 miles away from Japan. And then
Yeah.
it went back to Japan full of nuclear. Like, it's like really bad luck.
Right. Like, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
It just occurred to me that all this was like all like, it was just the US and Japan. Like, it's like,
I know. And I feel like, you say we were in a place of mutually assured destruction, like we're not in that now.
no, that doctrine never went away. Like,
No, I
I
know.
mean, there's a political, I mean, that's a strategy and that's been consistent. Like, nobody's disarmed the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're still in that spot and possibly will be forever. Taylor, do you want to talk about your new friend that you made online in Blue Skies?
Hearts. I have like 17 heart attacks. So
You're like Hisashi Ouchi.
I am exactly. Oh, sorry, that was in poor taste. But I I apologize. But I did. Um, I obviously am a huge fan of Dan Carlin, the historian, even though he insists that he's not a historian. He does hardcore history. It's incredible, and I feel like in my brain, I'm like he's gonna try to block me because I keep like mentioning him on Blue Sky because that's the only place where he actually like is, and I keep like we did the Munster Rebellion, and I was like, oh, da, 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 whatever. And but so he has a tour of the South coming up, and I slacked you immediately, and I was like, you have to go to this. And I know you're having problems with the website, but I feel like you'll get it. You'll figure it out. You
Yeah,
work,
I tried.
you
And
work
I
in tech.
still was. I know. I tried. And it was weird. It was like you have to register with Paramount Theaters.
Yeah,
When you
they make
register
it.
with Paramount Theaters, they won't let you through. It's like I don't know. It's a very illogical thing. But anyways, go ahead.
You'll figure it out. But because you have to go. But I put on Blue Sky like that. I sent you emergency gifts. I was like, you have to go and see this right now. And then he reposted it and said, "This is great. I've gotten so many requests to visit southern states. I hope you come out and join me." And I was like, "That's awesome." And then there's a morning. Well, I responded something crazy, that like I really enjoyed his show in LA that I went to, and he wrote back and said, "What an amazing thing to tell someone. Thank you so much." I'm like, "This is not the first time that I have." Love bombed you on Blue Sky, Dan Carlin, but I'm really excited that you did that. So if you go to his Blue Sky now, he just like reposted us, and it's just so exciting.
Did you read it in his voice?
Yes.
You
Dan
have to.
Carlin said, quote, "What an amazing thing to tell someone. Thank you so much."
He's got such a good voice for this. That is awesome.
Um, so yeah, I'm like very excited and I've been yelling about it because it's cool and he's cool.
So yeah,
I
Dan Carlin is our friend, everyone.
Yeah. Because I did at his LA show, that was the one where I like ran from the balcony down to the orchestra level to ask a question. And like people were raising their hands like civilized people. And then like the microphone man was in the middle of the aisle and I ran up to him and I like shouldered him and I was like, "Can I go next?" He was like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, as the only girl here, yes, you can go next," is what he was thinking in his head. But
Were you really the only girl there?
there were maybe 5% women.
Interesting. All right.
And they were all with a man. So Nicole and I were the only women who were there not with a man.
Wow. Wow. I assume that was a big theater too.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, super fun. And then I also he was eating dinner and I like threw our stickers at him and made him talk about how much I like to tell my kids about history. So I don't know if he remembers that, but so yes. Yeah, but I'm excited. He's the best. And I'm excited for you to figure out the website and go see him in Austin. Dan Carlin will be in Atlanta, Raleigh, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, and Houston, Texas in August.
Yep. Yep. I think it's August
It's
18th.
August 15th in Austin.
15th. Okay. Yep. Yep. That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the Paramount. It's good. It's a really good theater. It's a great theater for him to be in.
I think I saw My Favorite Murder there a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the big podcasts that from Freakonomics did one at the Paramount actually
Hmm.
fairly recently. So
Hmm.
yeah. It's done.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Find us Doomed to Fail pod on socials and on Blue Sky where we're being reposted by Dan Carlin and doomedtofailpod@gmail.com if you have any ideas.
Okay. We'll go ahead and cut it off there.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. Pause.
Okay, this